Welcome, everyone. Good morning. First, let me start with just a heartfelt thanks to all of you for coming, traveling from all over the country to be here today and tomorrow, give us your insights, hear our stories, and help us move the college forward. I really do appreciate all of you being here. I know the department heads, the faculty, students all appreciate you're willing to spend your valuable time to come back and visit us. Last year, I know we had some travel challenges with the weather. We addressed that issue this year. Glad to see that our solution worked and that you're all able to make it. For those that I haven't met, I'm Justin Schwartz. I have the honor and privilege of being the dean of this wonderful College of Engineering here at Penn State. And so welcome back into the college. I've got a lot to talk about. I'm going to throw hopefully a lot of information at you, hopefully with time for questions. Erin will decide that. But before I jump in, Erin is in the room. Usually she runs at this moment, so I do want to give her a great thanks on behalf of the college for everything she's done to get this together. And Lynn is where. Lynn also has done quite a bit, and I want to thank her as well. And Kate, getting changes all hours of every day to this presentation I'm about to make, and making it look as beautiful and professional as she has. So thank you all for all your help. So I want to start with some basic numbers of our people. Our college is our people. Our faculty, our staff, our students, our alums, our leadership. We've had a lot of changes in numbers of different populations over the last decade, so I'm going to touch on those at different points through the presentation. But to give you the snapshot of where we are right now, the number of undergraduates we have at UP is there in the middle. UP is University Park, is at 8,043. I'll show the 10-year trend line in a few minutes. But this is the first year in a long time that this year's undergrad population is slightly lower than last year's. We think now it's roughly at the right place. We grew rapidly, probably a little too rapidly for a number of years, and we finally got a little bit of control on that. The 11,329 you see for the undergraduates in the middle. On the left is the total number of undergraduates hoping to get their degree from our college, because there are, as you see, 3,286 who are at the Commonwealth campuses who anticipate coming here for their junior and senior year to finish their degrees here. And then on the right you see our graduate numbers. So we're at 946 PhD, that's up over 4% from last year. And the master's is also up 12%. That includes World Campus, which is where most of the master's program growth has been. The residential may actually even be slightly down, but the master's programs through World Campus are really growing rapidly. So that's also great to see. The other big number, of course, is our faculty size. Right? Our undergrad, if you go back a decade, which I'll show, the undergrad numbers have really grown a lot. The faculty numbers are now catching up. So this fall, for the first time in our history, we broke 300 tenure line faculty. Just 5 years prior, that was at 260, in the 260s. So it's a tremendous investment in our faculty. We have right now, of those 300, more than 100 have been at Penn State for 5 years or less. Right? And most of those are junior. So we have a very young, aspirational, dynamic group of faculty that are in the process of truly transforming who we are as a college, and that's all good news. We're also in the middle of searches. We have somewhere between 25 and 30 ongoing faculty searches in the college. We've already successfully hired 7 new faculty who will start this fall. There are 4 more offers pending, and probably 2 or 3 requests coming from the departments to the college for startup packages, et cetera, every week. And so that number is going to really take off. And then in the next month, that 7 hired will probably turn into 20 to 30. So we're looking at a continued growth in the number of faculty in the college. And that's across just about every department. Our research portfolio is growing as well. That peak in 2013-14 that then dropped off, that drop off was really 2 things. One was a change in the accounting of what we included and didn't include in the calculation. So it wasn't a sudden drop off in performance. It was really a change in how we would measure it. So you can see these are expenditures. So the expenditures have risen year over year, last year versus the year before. The precursor, of course, to expenditures is awards. And our awards this year relative to the same time last year are already up 10%. And last year's awards were up significantly from the year before. So what that's showing is that this investment in junior faculty is really starting to pay off. Right? They come in, they start building their program on startup funds, but then they start writing proposals, really even in the first year. But it takes time to start having success in proposal writing, and we're starting to see that success across the board now. So everything is pointed in the right direction in terms of the research portfolio. And I'll say some more about some initiatives that we've started to try to accelerate that growth with some strategic thinking across the college. Oop, I'm hitting the wrong button. There we go. All right, the new U.S. News & World Report rankings for the graduate programs just came out this week. At the department level, keep in mind it's purely reputational. It's surveys done by department heads across the country. We didn't have many huge movements up or down. A couple departments went down a place or two. And the way U.S. News & World Report does it is not anything that any of us that took statistics would ever be respectful of, to be perfectly subtle. They only go to, your score is up to 5.0, but there's only one decimal place. So if you just drop from, say, 4.36 to 4.34, you might drop 5 places in the rankings, right? Really based on very small differences because they're ties, because they don't have many significant digits. So, but we did have some departments that have moved up significantly. Computer science moved up quite a bit this year. Mechanical moved up to a few spots to its highest rank in the last 5 years at least. And industrial engineering also moved up. And let me apologize to any department head if you moved up and I didn't just mention you. I see Phil laughing. I think Kemi moved up maybe one spot, so that's all good. The college level graduate ranking is a little different. It's got a significant part that is reputational, and then it has a significant part that's based on various quantitative metrics that we report. It's all self-report. I'm not going to say that our peers are not honest in their reporting, but there are different ways of calculating the same thing. So our graduate overall ranking went down from 33 to 35. If I look at just the US publics, it stayed the same at 20. If I just look at the reputation, because I always get the question, how come the college ranking is lower than all the departments when it's the summation of the departments? Well, the reputational score for the college, that piece of the ranking is 24th in that same database. I show a few other ranking systems, Times Higher Ed, Shanghai, and QS. These are just all different types of surveys that are out there. 2 of the 3 have new data since last year. One of them is the same. I think it's QS that's the same. And in general, in that case, I think in some cases we moved up 1 or 2 in the US subset, but maybe went down in the world subset, and other ones slightly the other way. So really, it's not a huge change. The thing that brings down our overall college grad ranking in the U.S. News & World Report, quite simply, is the fact that we have such a young faculty. And it's not that they a priori decide that young faculty make you weak, but 2 of the biggest metrics are number of PhD students per faculty, right, and research expenditures per faculty. And so when you're bringing in young faculty, it takes time to build up the size of their graduate group. We also had a voluntary retirement program a few years back through which we lost some senior faculty. And so what we're really seeing is the fact that our faculty is young and is still in a growth mode. And so, for example, our reputation is 24th. Our PhDs per faculty right now is somewhere in the high 60s. But that's a number that we're looking at many ways to change and try to accelerate the growth of the graduate program. All right. Another topic that I talked about last year as a goal is to significantly address our issues related to equity and inclusion across all of our populations. So last year I announced we were in the middle of a search for a new associate dean. We created a new associate dean for equity and inclusion position. We had a very competitive, robust national search, and I can see Tanya there hiding. But Tanya joined us over the summer. She can stand and wave. Well, as soon as she finished, that's not standing waving, that's just waving. So Tanya is a full professor in chemical engineering and our associate dean for equity inclusion. She joins us from the University of Iowa, and she has really hit the ground running, trying to grasp the entirety and complexity of not just our college, but of Penn State. And so we're really happy to have her here, and I think we'll see the impact of her presence very quickly. Last year in our faculty hiring, we were almost at exactly 50% female. I think we had a total of 19 hires. It was 9 female, 10 male, and we were very proud of that. That was not just by happenstance. We were aggressive in really expanding our pool, really expanding the way we looked at our candidates holistically, and we got a really, really strong group of faculty, male and female, that joined us this current academic year. And this is a trend. When I look at the size our pool this year for the faculty searches, it's almost exactly the same in terms of percent female in this year's pool as last year's pool. And so we're looking to make this our norm and not be that one-year exception. We have been talking about the gender equity initiative that we launched just over a year and a half ago quite a bit. Looking at it, it's a big challenge. The goal is to have equity in our undergraduate population within about 6 or 7 years. I'll show you the numbers now. We creeped up this year by a little bit. We've really been spending the year trying to think more deeply about what the tactics are to address the issue holistically. It's a complex system, right, of K-12 feeds the applicant pool, the Penn State process for admissions, right, and then there's the yield aspect of how many that we admit that actually come, and then there's our retention and graduation rate. The retention and graduation rate for female engineer students, Penn State is arguably the flagship star university in the country. Thanks to our WEP program and our SWE team, our SWE chapter has won best chapter in the country something like 5 years in a row. Right? It's a pretty good track record, and we're really pleased with it. We also know that as we grow the percentage of females, we need to invest more into those programs to maintain that success rate. So we're looking at everything across the board, and we're starting to now implement some tactics. We're in the middle of the admissions and yield season this year, so we're experimenting with a few things that will hopefully pan out and see a significant increase in female students next year. But we also know, as we've been saying, that the #1 challenge we face for equity is really scholarship and resources. The 2 top reasons that students that decline our offers give for declining Penn State are tuition too high and scholarship too low. Right? Those sound the same, they're not quite the same. Tuition too high, we think, means they just couldn't, if they wanted to come, they couldn't afford it. Scholarship too low probably includes that reason, but also has some who, yes, you gave me a scholarship, but somebody gave me even a better deal, right? And so that's one of our focuses, is how do we significantly increase both the efficacy of the scholarship money that we have on hand for yield, but also increase the pool of resources that we have to address the need. So these are things that we're working on that aren't necessarily quite as public, but we're working hard to get to that point where we have a significant bend in the population curve. Because what's important to us is not just to bend the curve and get to equity, but to do it in a way that we get to equity and we stay there forever. Right? We're not looking to climb a mountain and come back down. Right? We're looking to get to a new norm. Right? In the other key aspect, we've had an opening for our MEP director for over a year now. We made the decision to fill Tanya's role first and then let the associate dean lead that search. We're in the interview stage now, if I'm correct. So we hope to have that position filled in the next couple months. And as we move towards gender equity, we're really talking across the college about how do we look at equity inclusion in a more holistic way, right? So how do we build what we would call it a truly inclusive academic community, right? What are the conceptual frameworks for this that really will help us support the experiences of all of our students? And when we say all of our students, we mean all 12,000 that I showed in the earlier slide, and not parse the experiences out by identity. We've started the conversation of what we're calling allyship. And so a couple of companies who recruit heavily from us asked me the question about a year ago, they said, well, we have this leaky pipeline, right? We bring in a diverse group of new engineers, and 10 years down the road, we're back to the same male-female ratio and the same low number of underrepresented groups that we had before we changed our hiring practice. What do we do? And so at first, I really wasn't sure that I could help them with what's happening in their workplace, but the more I thought about, the more I realized that we're going to graduate over the next decade over 20,000 new Penn State engineers. Right, there'll be male, there'll be female, there'll be white, Hispanic, African American, foreign, right? We'll have a very broad distribution of engineers that graduate from our college. Every one of those engineers needs to go into the workplace and be the type of engineer that leads to an inclusive environment, right? And our goal as a college is that every one of our students graduates with the complete skill set to be a successful engineer, right, wherever they go next, whether it's industry, grad school, military, wherever. And so we really started to have the conversation of how do we develop this mindset of inclusivity and equity across everything that we do, so that all of our students, when they graduate, are people you'd want to hire to not only be the stellar engineers that Penn State graduates are, but to also be the positive contributors to your climate, to then, over the long term, help you address any leaky pipelines issues you may have as well. So we're actually going to start with a student-led event where our female and underrepresented students are essentially given the opportunity to invite another student, an ally, and to recognize them as an ally and have a big ally event run by the students, and I was really happy that they're excited about it. What I don't want to do is create a separate allies program, right? We want to have, we want all of our programs to truly be as inclusive as they can be, and build out by having our student-to-student connections make that work. So that's coming in the next few weeks, and we're excited to see where it goes. I talked already a bit about looking at yield scholarships for female underrepresented students. We have started with the process of identifying our corporate friends who are truly serious about addressing equity issues in their workforce and looking for ways that we can partner together to have scholarships to increase our yield. We know that we're the pipeline source of students to these companies, and those that really have the commitment to make a change are the ones that we're looking to partner with up front. And so those discussions have begun across all the disciplines. And the other issue of equity beyond gender, FS Roundtable means a faculty staff roundtable. We've started in the last year and continued this year having topical faculty staff, everyone's invited roundtables to discuss certain topics. And so we've covered a variety of different things that you'll see outcomes of as I talk. But the next one coming up in a few weeks, led by Dean Peoples, is focusing specifically on what we're calling equity beyond gender. We've spent a lot of time talking about gender equity in the last year and a half. Those activities are now moving forward, right? And we want to make sure that we then follow that with the bigger conversation about equity. So this is our 10-year trend for undergraduate students by gender. So the light blue on the top is the male population, the dark blue on the bottom is the female. So you can see the female population increased in absolute value and in percent this year over last, but not by a huge number. And the overall population, you can see for the first time in 10 years has actually gone down slightly. If we look at PhD students and faculty, this doesn't break down by any of the equity issues, but again, you can see this growth in the PhD program has been relatively slow. The faculty numbers have gone up about 20% now over a decade. The PhD student numbers have not, right? And that's what's really influencing the ranking. And this, like I said, is really two effects. One is the time demand in our faculty of having such a large growth in undergraduate population, right? And the fact that so many of our faculty right now are young and still building up their efforts, right? So one of our goals that I'll talk about a bit more is trying to push up that PhD student number more rapidly even as we continue to hire more faculty. Here's our numbers for underrepresented minorities. So the bottom dark blue is you can see that number has been flat the last couple of years. The percent went up slightly. The real help in this regard we hope is coming soon. So you'll notice I say that the Common App, so the Common App is a method by which high school students can very easily apply to a multitude of schools at once. This year is the first year that Penn State is part of the Common App, right? So what this means is you don't want to have a job in admissions this year. Last year's applicant pool for Penn State across the board was about 64,000. This year's application pool for Penn State was over 90,000. It's a 42% increase in number of applicants to Penn State because of the Common App. That's 27,000 more students showing interest. Pennsylvania residents, that's a 15% increase. Non-Pennsylvania residents, not a surprise, is a 72% increase, right? What this means for us is predicting yield is going to be harder this year, right? Because we've never had that pool of students. We know that it's a huge increase in number of applicants, but we know these are applicants who are applying at more schools than our previous applicants, right? So we did start the process as a university a month earlier in terms of accepting and communicating with students so we could try to manage it. You know, I joke that on Monday and Wednesday the admissions people worry that we're going to have too few students, and on Tuesday and Thursday they wake up worrying we're going to have too many. But they've talked to peers and they have their models, and hopefully it comes into the number we want. The interesting thing about this, so the process is, of course, we accept, and then on a certain date we also put our scholarship offers out, and the students can accept, you know, anytime after they've been admitted, and the group that we look at is what we call the paid accepts. Those are the ones who have accepted admission and have put down their deposit. And we do always have some melt, some of those who put down a deposit but still don't come, but that's a relatively small number because once your money's on the table, right, you're more likely to go through. So far this year, as of a few weeks ago, talking about paid accepts to Penn State overall, the African American population has increased 40% from last year, and the Hispanic population is up 25%. The Common App has transformed the demographic of our applicant pool, and we're seeing that already here in the first year translating into a change in our student demographic. Now, how that turns out in the end is still a mystery. How that turns out in terms of the engineering pool is also still a mystery. I haven't seen the numbers dug into deeply yet. But in terms of transforming the population of students that we draw from, this Common App is proving to be, you know, a key first step. So research and grad ed, last year I talked about some of our goals in this area. You know, to start with, to smartly grow our research portfolio and really focus on going after bigger team grants and also diversifying our funding sources. So I'll say a bit more about that in a minute. Correcting the undergrad to grad ratio, you can see that we've started, you know, we've controlled now the undergraduate growth and tamped that down a little bit. The PhD growth has been present but small, right? The master's growth is more rapid because of World Campus. And so that's a topic we're really going to be focusing more on now, is how to really push up that grad number. And then growing PhD programs is complex, right? To grow a master's program, you know, it's mainly, you know, have great programs, which we do the marketing, get the students in, and have the support structures so that it's not a burden, too much of a burden on the faculty, right, and they can succeed. PhD programs are much more complex in terms of the resources needed, right, to support a student for 4 or 5 or 6 years through their research. You know, it's just a bigger investment, and so we're looking at a variety of ways of working on that. And of course, one of those ways is development, amongst others. So one thing that struck me that I talked about last year is that the NSF's big engineering flagship program is their engineering research centers. And in 30 years, Penn State has never been the lead on an ERC. And we decided it was time for that to change. So a year ago, we're under Chris Ron's leadership. I saw Chris. Where's Chris? There's Chris. We started an initiative within the college to encourage faculty, right, to build teams and start developing ERC center proposal ideas before the NSF solicitation even came out, right? We put resources on the table. The college put in some money. Chris worked the hallways of campus, increased the amount of money by a factor of 5 compared to what the college itself had put in, and seeded a number of teams. Those teams have turned into 7 ERC pre-proposal submissions that are now pending with the NSF. The way the process works is that you put in a pre-proposal, the NSF will formally down select. So you can only submit a full proposal if invited. We have 7 teams that have submitted. To give you a comparison, during the last ERC cycle a few years ago, we had 2. Right. So a 3.5 times increase in the number of really strong teams. And I will say, the only group I envy as little as I do admissions is the group at the NSF that has to evaluate these pre-proposals. Because if I had to down select from these 7, it would be very difficult. These are outstanding teams and proposals. And you can see they're from a variety of departments across the college, and one from material science led, in EMS that has a significant presence from us as well. So we are cautiously optimistic. We're awaiting the NSF feedback on who gets invited, and then we'll go from there. And I will say that the effort to write the full proposal is practically a full-time job for the faculty member doing this, to write a competitive proposal. These are not easy proposals to develop, right? It's not just 10, 15 pages of great science. 10, 15 pages of great science is sort of a minimum condition, right? You really have to think through a center. You have to think about an entire industry network to partner with in terms of your technology development and transition. You have to think about broader impacts, how you're engaging students, how you're engaging undergraduate students, how you're reaching out to the community. It's a really a major commitment for a faculty member to say, I want to lead one of these center proposals. And then when they get funded, it's even more of a commitment. So I really applaud our faculty for taking this on and jumping in and leading this effort. Now, another area where I think we have real potential to separate ourselves from a number of our peers is to better take advantage of the fact that the Applied Research Lab is here on campus, right? So their new contract, and the way their contract works is they get a cap, a 5-year cap of expenditure, and then they have to go find the money to meet the cap. So when you read that the ARL got a new $2.1 billion contract, right, that doesn't mean they have $2.1 billion on the table yet, right? But that means that they have then the authority to go out and build those programs. So most of the work at ARL is engineering, and most of the work at ARL is classified. And that is the challenge, is the fact that it's classified. So our faculty can't help them because they don't know what the ARL needs are, because they don't have clearance, and you don't get clearance until you're on a project, right? So there's a catch-22 on the faculty side that want to work closely with ARL. The ARL staff and scientists, they have to charge every hour of their time to a project, right? So they can't take a day or a week and just decide to go visit 2 or 3 of our departments and get to know the faculty, because they'd be doing it on their own time. Right? So we decided, I talked to some other peers who have similar situations. I talked to Dean at Georgia Tech, they have GTRI. We talked to the Dean at MIT and Lincoln Lab. The consistent feedback I got from them is, we don't know how to do it either. I was surprised, like we have something on the order of maybe 10 PhD students supported by ARL, which to me just seemed way too small. So we decided to do something new. And we announced and hired our inaugural defense liaison position, right? And this is Professor of Practice Ned Brokloff, who's here. You can wave. I don't have a photo with the tie. I have to get a new photo of Ned. But we are really excited to have Ned join us. He started on Monday, right? So we don't have major impact yet. But we'll give him a couple more weeks. And the beauty of this position is that the college is paying for half and ARL is paying for half. Both sides really want to see a fundamental transformation in the way we interact, right? The amount of research that the college can do to support ARL projects, both existing projects, but also ARL recognizes that some of our basic science research in the college could be their big programs 5 or 10 years from now, right? And they want to really start building the relationships more deeply. We're looking for how we can effectively give a little more standing to ARL researchers in our college so that they can engage more with grad students in a productive way. And we're looking for how we can deal with this classified, non-classified barrier, right? And so one of Ned's primary jobs in the beginning phase will be better understand ARL needs, better understand college capabilities, and put together basically a mating program for intellectual interactions between the two. So we have high hopes, and we're glad to have Ned in this role. Ned is an alum, so if you're involved in any Penn State donor and volunteer activities, you've probably met him because he's involved in almost all of them. And he comes to us, he was with APL for like 30 years, how many? 36 years. So he understands the concept of the university-based defense research lab extremely well. So we're excited to have him and looking forward to really seeing an increase in the number of PhD students working on ARL-sponsored projects to help us grow the excuse me, to help us grow the PhD programs. Now, about a year ago, or not quite a year ago, you probably started seeing this new logo. Because about a year or so ago, a little bit more, we started talking about, how do we brand the College of Engineering at Penn State to really capture both our mission, right, what we're doing in our research, but also what we're doing in our education, and what it is that really excites the engineering undergraduates that come here. I would talk to sort of high school juniors and seniors who are planning on going to engineering, who have been admitted here, some had already accepted, some were still thinking about it, and I would simply ask them, why did you choose engineering? Right? And unlike my generation, which would more likely talk about, I always worked on my car, or I rebuilt my radio, or I did ham radio, right? Or all sorts of different I like to do these hands-on things, so I went into engineering, or I was really good at math, so I went into engineering. Invariably, today's students say, I really want to change the world, I really want to have impact on the world, so of course I chose engineering. Right? That is the draw that gets them into our discipline. They understand that that's our mission. We also know that if you focus on the impact mission, you're far more likely to excite female high school students than if you don't focus on the impact on the world mission. So this is our new sort of branding tagline, inspiring change and impacting tomorrow. That went through, I don't know how many different iterations and cycles and surveys of all of our different populations from late high school through older alum. And this is the one that really resonated the most across all groups. And the idea here is that we recognize that historically there's this continuing growing divide between sort of the STEM and the non-STEM cultures in the country and even across the world. I show C.P. Snow's Two Cultures book cover. This is the newer book cover. So I first heard of this book when I was in high school, and at that time it was a 20-year-old book, and it was talking about this growing divide then. So this isn't a new story, right? But we're 60 years later than when it was first discussed, and I'd say the divide has grown even more so. And so to some extent, I think the idea that engineering is what changes the world, right? That every major change in human history has had an engineering influence, but not been solely by engineering, right? But by that interaction between engineering and everyone has been so compelling is something we need to rethink. And so we are really amplifying through this brand launch our focus on impact. So we have impact on our students through their education, through their research activity, and impact on our disciplines through our research, right, and the students we produce, but also the impact we have on the world through the outcomes of everything that we do. Right? So our goals then is to really become known as the leaders in the engineering community across the country for this focus on impact and changing the world. With that, we need to really rethink what we mean by multidisciplinary, right, and how we engage with, not just across the disciplines within the College of Engineering, right, but really across the university. Engaging globally to solve societal problems is something we've been doing well for years, but we're also looking at how we amplify that, and therefore establish this humanity-focused brand for the college. Right. So one of the things I talked about last year was this idea of an initiative between Penn State Law, School of International Affairs, and the College of Engineering. That has gotten quite a bit of momentum in the last year. We sort of break it into two different categories. One is the academic programs, one is more the research and scholarly collaborations. We already have one successful faculty co-hire between the School of International Affairs and Civil Environmental Engineering. So Wei Ping joined us in January. She's an air quality expert, and we're really happy to have her. And we're expecting multiple faculty hires within the College of Engineering, but looking at people who have an interest not only in sort of the more traditional engineering research, but also on this interface with policy or with law. We had our first symposium event back in December. and this was focused on election security. Right? This is an area where our computer science faculty have nationally recognized expertise. It was intentionally held the first week of December, so it would be a good month after the election and would be more of an aftermath thought process. So you can see the picture of the full room. So we really were appreciative of Patrick McDaniel leading that. But it was co-hosted, and you know, the interaction between Patrick and law and international affairs was pretty intense and regular, and really showed the ability to bring people together and excite them when you talk about topics of national importance that can't be addressed by any one of these disciplines, right? So there's we had the symposium in December, and there's a whole host of follow-on activities that are coming out of it. So it wasn't just a get-together, feel-good kind of day, right? It was a get-together and really do some action planning to go forward. Our next symposium is coming out in just under a month, and that is focusing on law, policy, engineering issues related to biotechnology. Specifically, next-generation devices for biotech and biomedicine. We have two keynote speakers already committed. So Greg Lucier, one of our alums, the chairman of the board of NuVasive, will come. And Dan O'Connor, the president CEO of Oncosec Medical, is also coming. But we're looking at participations from researchers, policymakers, industry participants, again, all coming together to look at the interface between these different disciplines and how they impact society. So we're excited to have that, and it will also be the inaugural big event in the new chemical and biomedical engineering building. So we're looking forward to taking advantage of that facility and showing it off as well. So on the academic side, we're working on how to really thoughtfully develop educational opportunities, not just for engineering students, but also for law students, international affairs students in this intersection. So we're getting the faculty from a number of our departments together with faculty from those schools, and we're looking at things like a Master's of Engineering in Engineering Law and Policy, where you'd have about half the content would be technical and about half the content wouldn't be. This is probably targeting people as much who are already in the workforce, right, who may be thinking, well, I'll get an MBA to further my career, but maybe I don't really want an MBA, right? And this would then give them a different career path in terms of a subsequent engineering degree that they could use to build their career. A certificate in engineering, which would be targeting non-engineering students, right? And certificates in international tech policy or legal studies, which would target engineers. IUG is an integrated undergrad-grad degree, so we have a few of those that are in the development stage right now between a few of our departments and the School of International Affairs. So through that process, a student graduates with their bachelor's degree in the engineering discipline, and then in the subsequent year gets their master's in international affairs. And then there's also discussions about combining BS with JD, and even a PhD JD degrees are now in discussion. So we're looking to really create opportunities for our students, which is one of the benefits of being a big school. Another new initiative in this impact on the world space is our partnership with Drawdown. So Drawdown, this is the book cover, was a New York Times bestseller about a year and a half ago. Maybe, yeah, a year and a half, 2 years ago. They came and gave a talk on campus, Paul Hawken did, and it sort of picked up from there. And so over this year and a half of discussion, we're now at the point where Penn State will be the North American university lead for partnering with Drawdown on looking at the science behind the solutions that they've developed. So the idea of Drawdown is let's put aside dogma and all of our preconceived notions about what we need to do to reduce CO2 and equivalent in the atmosphere back to original levels, right? And by all solutions, it ranges from, all the energy space that we talk about the most, I think, in society, right? The environmental remediation space. But what they've discovered through their analysis, and their analysis is essentially, let's look at an idea, calculate what the upfront cost would be, what the return on investment would be from the financial cost, and what the reduction in CO2 would be by, say, 2050. And they said, they decided to identify the top 100 solutions, right, and develop these quantitative models. And what they found was that, in fact, there's probably more impact in the food system than even in the energy system. But things like educating women and girls in third world countries, buildings and cities, and land use, transportation, materials, all of these things have a role together. The interesting side effect or side note is that of the 100 solutions, I think 99 of them have a very large positive return on investment. So even if you just look at it from a business perspective, it's a guide to good ideas for advancing finance and business in a community. So we are partnering with them, focusing mostly on the science side, saying, well, you have 100 models. How do you improve your model, right? Because I mean, a model is only as good as the accuracy of what's been developed. We also decided that since we're really good at the education side, to launch this summer what we call the Drawdown Scholars Research Experience for Undergraduates program. So this is a program where we advertise nationally for undergraduates to come to campus this summer, spend 6 weeks working with faculty, really focusing on how to make one of these models more accurate and better from a scientific standpoint. We were a little bit late in launching. We had maybe at most a 2-week window for applicants to come in, yet we ended up with 263 applications, which was far more than we expected. We were happy to say. It included 64% female, and keep in mind this is not just engineering, right? We have participation at UP. 5 students will go to Harrisburg, 1 will go to Brandywine. But it's students in agriculture, it's students in arts and architecture, in earth and mineral sciences, in engineering, and health and human development. So faculty from all of those colleges have shown interest, and so the recruiting net for students was broad. So we're really excited to see how this moves forward over the summer, and we're looking at the National Science Foundation funds what they call RAU sites. So we're using this year as our pilot case, and then we'll be submitting a proposal to them to get external funding for future years. We also, one of these roundtables I talked about earlier, last year we had a roundtable about drawdown with our faculty, and one of our faculty made the suggestion that we should have a drawdown conference, right? So that's coming to fruition, so it'll be focused again on the science behind drawdown. It'll be the first international conference. It will be here at UP, I think at the Penn Stater, this September. So we're excited to see putting Penn State on the map reputationally in this space with this international conference. Now, if you've heard Dr. Barron talk, you've heard him talk about Energy University. So a few years back, he asked people here to look at the 5 main categories of energy research that are that exist across the country, and to rank universities in the top 5 in all of those areas. And what he found was that Penn State was the only university to be in the top 5 in all 5 areas. And he says publicly it's been one of his goals since years ago when he was dean here. He was dean here in EMS, then he left, and then he came back as president, was to really put the brand mantle of Energy University on Penn State. Right? The history of Penn State economics for 200 years has been squarely in the energy space, energy and transportation. Right? He wants to make sure that we have that mantle. So he's been talking about Energy University since before I got here. And so recently I got together with the Dean of Earth and Mineral Sciences, and then we brought in the Director of the Institutes for Energy and Environment. Right? And we put forward this idea of this consortium for integrated energy systems. And the proposal that's on the table right now would bring 8 new faculty positions, 5 to COE, 3 to EMS, right, in this space. And we're not targeting up front this department or that department, right? We're looking for people, right, in specific general themed areas who can also serve as bringing people together, right, and putting ourselves even more squarely on the map, right, in certain key topics. So we've broken it down into renewable and non-renewable energy hybrid systems, so the generation side of the energy market, smart energy systems, right, which is really the utilization side of the energy space, right, and then impact mitigation, system optimization of energy generation and distribution, right. That's make sure that what you did in the first 2 are good for the planet. And so we're looking to launch this initiative more formally in the coming months and start doing major faculty searches next year. Right, and like I said, this is a 2-college and IEE partnership. Now in the brand launch, we had a major rollout back in September. right? And so a change in the view of the engineering magazine, right? Changes in our website really amplifying this theme of impact, right? Nice quotes from our students, from our younger faculty. That's Caitlin Grady from Civil Environmental Engineering, right? One of our industrial engineering seniors, right? All who just so naturally articulate this issue of impact, right? So I want to thank Kate and please. So I should make Kate stand and take a bow, but she's shaking her head no, and I know what that head shake means. But really, thanks to Kate and the communications team for putting this together. And another thing you're going to start seeing from us in the coming period is much more dynamic video representation of who we are and what we do. This is an ongoing conversation of how we show ourselves to the world. Oops, how do I go to the next slide? There we go. And of course, I want to shout out to our don't want to just show the students. Here's our Engineering Alumni Society board having a little more fun than they like to admit that they have. But they were this is at the brand launch event that we had in Kunkel. All right. Interdisciplinary programs is another topic that fits within this space of impact. But it's something we're talking more and more about. And one of the questions that I'm putting forward to you to talk about right during the next today and tomorrow. So one of the questions is this topic of integrated degrees across disciplines. More and more our students are interested in not just one narrow major, right? And we know that when they get into the workforce, having more engineering breadth to their background really will serve them well in the long term. So we've started the conversation of, should we have more dual degrees? How do we create them? Which are the right partnerships? In the current climate, just about everybody, not just in engineering, but on campus, says, oh, we'd like a dual degree with computer science. We recognize how ubiquitous many of the computer science skills have become across so many different disciplines in not just engineering, but science. But we want to ask that question of, what is the right space of interdisciplinarity that our students need so that 5-10 years from now, we're continuing to produce the students who are most ready to work on their first day. So the video highlighted the additive manufacturing master's degree, right? That's an effort between 5 different departments, 4 in our college plus material science. And the rate of student enrollment has just skyrocketed very quickly. The interest in that degree program right across the country is tremendous and I think is going to continue to grow. In the nuclear engineering master's degree, there's now a formal nuclear security program, right? This has already started to attract students who don't have undergraduate degrees in engineering, right, who are in international affairs, who are focused on the diplomacy side of security and trying to understand, the complex technical aspects, right, of the diplomacy around nuclear security. That's online and residential, and that has also started to really grow. But we want to take this not just at the master's level, but ask, more deeply go into the question at the, I guess the animation, this one didn't work. at the undergraduate degree, the question we're putting forward to you is, what combination should we be thinking about for both undergraduate and graduate, but really the undergraduate in particular, right? So when you think about hiring students, who are getting degrees in your discipline, what other discipline do you wish they knew more about, right? And what are the right partnerships between our departments and programs that would continue to elevate our students' marketability and impact, right, in industry once they graduate from us? So that's one of the two questions we put forward to you, right, to talk about in your meetings today and tomorrow. The other thing I just wanted to touch on, because it affects all of our students, I want to make you aware of, is we are looking at modernizing what we call our entrance to major, and with that, what we call exposure to major. So in the past, and still today, our students basically don't enter their major formally until after their sophomore year. This is very much outside the norm across the country for engineering, and also across other majors at Penn State across campus, right? So we've started the process of looking to move it up to be after their first year, right, essentially the equivalent of their first year in terms of number of hours. We think this is important for fairness, right? For a student to be 2 years in paying tuition and still not even know what degree they're getting, I just don't think is fair to them or their families. I think it will help us plan better, right, what our enrollment flow is going to be if we know what major students have earlier. And I actually think it will be a very advantageous for the Commonwealth campus students to know a year before they get here which degree program they're in. Because one of the struggles for those students when they come to University Park is they're joining a cohort that's already somewhat established, right? So if they know a year before that they're in their major, right, they can start interacting with the student group in their major even before they get here, right, and start networking socially with their peers, right, and really feel part of the department even if they haven't physically gotten here yet. So I show here some of the details of what we're looking at in terms of the change. The one thing that we want to make sure we do as we move the entrance to major up is make sure that our students are really well informed in terms of what all their options are, right? I don't think we do a particularly great job of using the 2 years to expose them to the options, right? We have 14 different undergraduate degree programs now in the college, right? We'd like them to, my dream is that when they go through entrance to major, they could write a sentence about each one, right? And just say, here's what a chemical engineer might do, here's what I might do with an engineering science degree, here's what I do with a mechanical engineering degree, here's what I can do with a nuclear engineering degree, and just be cognizant of what they're choosing and what they're not choosing. But it's harder, it's easier said than done. So one of the things we're looking at is how to deliver messages about our departments and our programs to our students. I think we wait too long to start. There's no reason why we can't start informing them the day they get admitted to the university, right? When they get here in August as freshmen, they're getting overwhelmed, right? Where am I going to live? What student clubs? Who are my new friends? How do I find this? How do I find that? Right? There's a lot to take in very quickly as a new freshman on campus. And if you're at the Commonwealth campuses, you don't even have, right, all the resources at your disposal to really learn about all of the majors. So we're looking to put this into a video platform. When I talk to students and I say, well, if there were videos, and they're emailed to you, would you watch them? Probably not. I say, well, what if you could watch it on your handheld device? Oh yeah, I would certainly watch it, right? So the goal is to get videos on every major into our students' hands as early as possible. And then once they have a Penn State ID, I'd even like to require them to log in before they run it, so we at least know that they ran the video. And I'll never say that I can require them to watch the video, but I can say that I can require them to run the video. And try to give them as much information about all of our majors as we possibly can so that they make the choice, right, that's really the right choice for them. We talk a lot about affordability for undergraduate education. One of the most important things for affordability is having a high graduation rate, right? If you have to go an extra semester or an extra year, you're not only paying more for that extra year, you're also one less year in the workforce, right? So a major initiative, from my perspective, for affordability is simply elevating our graduation rate. And one of the best ways to elevate your graduation rate is to have students choose the right major the first time, right? And not to find out downstream, boy, I really wish I was in this major instead of that major. Now do I go back and change? Do I cost a year or two to do that, right? I'm not really as happy in this major, so I'm not doing as well, right? Those are the issues that I think we can really address by changing the entrance and exposure to major plan. So this is something that's coming soon. And we would like these videos to be somewhat comprehensive. So don't be surprised maybe if you get reached out to and said, hey, can we get a spot of you talking about your company or what you did with your degree, to be content on these videos. Because our students don't just respond to faculty, big surprise, right? They really do respond to a spectrum of information. So they like to hear about older students and what they're doing, but they do love to hear from alums and from industry folks to get a sense of where can they go, right, with their career in the long term if they choose these different degree paths. All right. I'll also touch on development because it's been a big topic. The university goal, we're in the second semester of the third year of a 5-year campaign, which means December 31st was the halfway point. The university goal is $1.6 billion. The college's goal is $189 million in development. We are currently, as of February, at 111.8, so 59%. So we're running just a bit ahead of the target. And there, at some point soon, there's going to be a reassessment of the target campus-wide. So the better we do, it may be that our target gets upped, but the development officers take a side. But I think the impact of development on our college and our students is profound and important. So that conversation is coming. But the message here is really that our team has really been doing an excellent job in reaching out to our alums and moving our agenda forward. There have been university match programs. Some of them continue, some of them have ended. One of the ones that ended recently was the Open Doors. We're really proud that we have 41 new Open Doors scholarships in the college. Those were the scholarships that were matched 2-to-1. So every dollar, a $30,000 gift from an alum was a $90,000 scholarship forever. So that program ended, but I think we did quite well. That's 41 students a year forever who are going to get help that they wouldn't have otherwise gotten. We have a matching program for early career professorships. We've landed 12 of those so far. That program continues, and we're going to continue to push for that. The graduate scholarship program match we've also done reasonably well with, and we have 19 first-time endowed scholarships as well, which was only open to donors who hadn't done an endowment before. So that's also a significant scholarship increase. So we're really happy to see the resources starting to come in, and we're going to keep pushing quite a bit more. And one of the reasons why we'll be pushing more is the facilities master plan. So a year ago, we really appreciated the fact that we had just launched the master plan the week that you guys were here. The fact that you were coming helped me push the university to get the contract out to the architects, to get the process started so that the architects could meet with you. And I know that the response from the architects from having that opportunity to meet with all the IPAC members was really very positive. The first thing they really needed to do for master planning was get a better understanding of who we are as a college, what our culture is, and develop that understanding of how engaged we are with industry, how engaged we are with our alums. And so start having that be the kickoff event for the master planning, I think had a really positive impact on them and really helped push it in the right direction. Now, this is the quote I like to talk about with our master plan, right? It's better to aim too high and miss it than too low and reach it. I'm actually at a point where I'm thinking we may be aiming high and have a shot at hitting it. So I'm going to give you a summary of where we are, right, and where we hope to go in the master plan, and then I'll be at the point for taking questions. Pre-master plan, of course, though, was what we call CBEB, Chemical and Biomedical Engineering Building. It has opened its doors in the last couple weeks. Faculty and staff have started moving in. It is a beautiful facility, and we're really excited. It's 110,000 assignable square feet. It's got large auditorium classroom that we've been desperate for years in the college. Beautiful, flexible lab spaces. And this is the first engineering-only building to open at Penn State since 2001, with apologies to Ag Engineering, because yes, they got a new building a year before. The way space is managed and the college is managed, of course, all the Ag engineers are part of our college as students, but their space is considered part of the College of Ag, right? So this is from the perspective of how the university views engineering space. this is the first new building in 18 years. And we're really excited. I hope you'll have a chance to go and see it. We have the ribbon cutting scheduled for April 4th. And we're looking forward to seeing the impact of this on our students across the board. This is what Core Campus looks like today. It's a little bit of a contrast to that picture, and I'm not referring to the snow. So what you see, of course, is this quarter-mile long Hammond, right, which is hiding 100-year-old units. The units did have their 100th birthday this year. And then off on the side, you can see Reber, which is a nice classic-looking university building, and Electrical Engineering West, which is a classic university-looking building. And fortunately, the trees are hiding EE East, which is not our worst-looking building, but not our best-looking building, to put it politely. Right, so this is where we started with the master plan. And where we are now is that the outcome of this year-long study is a two-phase master plan, right? Phase 1 began already on July 1st, and it is moving forward with full speed. So you've probably seen news articles about this just in the last few weeks. The first thing that happens for Phase 1, which is not under our budget, but is a prerequisite, is building a parking deck at the very far end of West Campus. That's in the advanced design stage. The reason we have to have the parking deck first is our new buildings are going on what's currently parking lot. This is really nice. You can ask chemical engineering what it's like to be in swing space, right? It's not the preferred mode, but Fensky had to come down before CBEB could go up. So with this master plan, we build 2 new buildings on sites that currently don't have buildings, right? So that we can move in and not have this massive need for swing space, right? Because when you're building hundreds of thousands of square feet, right, if you're taking something down first, you need a place to house those people. I proposed Old Main Lawn, I was told no. I asked about College Ave, and they said that'd be a traffic issue, right? So instead we went with new buildings on unbuilt sites. In this Phase 1, we'll have 2 new buildings on West Campus. The architect has been selected. It was a truly intense competitive process. In the end, we ended up going with Payette, which is the architect firm that you met last year as part of who did the master planning. Did master planning give them an advantage against the competition? Yes, and it gave them advantages. It also gave them some significant disadvantages. But in the end, the selection committee, which was a few of us from the college, a number of people from OPP, Office of Physical Plant, we're all in an advisory capacity to the 3 members of the Board of Trustees who were on the committee, but it was unanimous in terms of the selection of Payette. So we're thrilled to have them continuing their relationship with us and moving us forward. At the end of Phase 1, it's 5 years from a financial perspective. It'll probably take a little more than 5 years to complete. We'll have 2 new buildings on West Campus. We'll have a renovated Sackett, right? And we have budgeted for tearing down Hammond and tearing down the units, right? And then in Phase 2, Phase 1 is approved by the Board of Trustees and funding is approved. Phase 2, I'll show you also, is still on the, has not been to the Board of Trustees, is not formally approved. It will go through what we call FRC, the Facilities Resource Committee on campus, right, to bless it, but it's a couple of years out before it goes forward to the board for implementation, and that's a key step for our long-term success. Phase 2 will finish Sackett in its current vision, which is new wings that don't look like Hammond but look like Sackett, and then a major rebuild of Core Campus and a 3rd building on West Campus. So I can walk you through some notional ideas of what these buildings might look like. So this is the West Campus, what we're calling the West Campus Hub at the end of Phase 1. So you'll see the big parking deck right on the far left. It will be one of the biggest buildings on campus because it's going to serve parking not just for West Campus, right, but for Core Campus as well. And then next to that is what's called West 2, and I'll say more about some of the programming for West 2. And then West 1 is a much bigger building. If those numbers are too small, they'll be clear on the subsequent slide. The shapes of those buildings are currently notional, right? We've just hired Payette to do the detailed design, but the sizes are roughly where they're going to end up, and the locations are where they'll end up. If you then take a little aerial view of what we look like at the end of Phase 1, right, you can see the orange buildings on West Campus are those same 2 new ones, and you can see an oddly shaped renovated Sackett, and that's because based on the current budget structure, Sackett will get gutted, the end caps removed, a new end cap a new end extension put on one side. The main part of Sackett completely renovated. That new end piece will actually just be shell, and it's in phase 2 that shell gets built out and the other end piece gets built. But you can also see that's what College Ave could look like without Hammond and the units there, and with landscaping and architecture in its place. Program summary for the 3 buildings, you can see, right, West 1 is big, 160,000 assignable square feet, plus or minus about 10,000, right? Until you have detailed design, you don't know the actual square footage. West 2 is about 60,000 assignable square feet, a much larger percent ratio of assignable to gross because of what we're putting in there, and in part because West 2 is expected to have a very large high bay, right, which is a very high, it was 100% assignable to gross. And then the renovated Sackett without the end caps, to only 27,500 square feet. This is the distribution of how the spaces come out. There will be general purpose classrooms in all 3 buildings. So it's about 41% teaching and learning, which includes makerspace and other things, not just classrooms, of course. 24% office, 22% gets categorized as research, 10% meeting collaboration space, and then the 3% miscellaneous is really infrastructural support to support the building. So looking a little more closely, West 1 we envision really as a big research engine. This is a large building. It's about 30–40% bigger than the new chemical and biomedical engineering building, which is already large. So that's going to have some large general purpose classrooms, and large is really the key word. One of our struggles in teaching isn't the number of classrooms, it's the size of the classrooms. We need bigger modern teaching spaces that will actually let us more effectively teach without putting more square footage into classrooms by simply having them bigger, which our current structures just don't allow. There will be CAD labs, indoor flight, studios, research labs. We anticipate moving the student support offices from the college into West 1 as a big student hub. Large engineering knowledge commons, even some dining, along with, of course, department offices and faculty offices. West 2, which is a little smaller but actually comes online first, we're envisioning as an active learning hub. So the idea here is a large high bay space, right, which is research and teaching, but to move CEDTAP classrooms, CEDTAP studios, to move all of Learning Factory. Currently Learning Factory is about 6,000 square feet in a small, nondescript, aesthetically looking building. And we want Learning Factory and Makerspace and hands-on activity to really be much more heart and soul to the undergraduate education experience, right? So we're looking at moving all of Learning Factory in, plus some elements of what's currently in the FAME Lab in the Leonard Building, which do support some aspects of Maker and other educational aspects also, into a massive 30,000 square foot student-centric makerspace, looking to use Peter Butler's phrase, for a cornerstone to capstone hands-on makerspace experience for all of our students. Right, we want Maker Commons. There will be a couple of GPCs, general purpose classrooms, in there also. But the idea is that this facility supports every aspect of makerspace, right? Not just the construction of say, prototype, but the design process, coding process, electronic, everything that you need all under one roof. And so the other big question for you to think about that we're looking for your feedback on, if we're going to have a cornerstone to capstone makerspace, what does it need to have to meet the educational needs of the students in your discipline? Right? How do we facilitate this? How do we build it out? How do we instrument it in a way that every one of our 8,000 students wants to go here, right, from the time they're freshmen through the time they graduate, right, and really have an integrated experience so that not only are the individual department capstones supported, right, but we create a hands-on experience where students from every department, every discipline are commingling and interacting on a frequent basis. So that's something we'd like your feedback on. Now, renovated Sackett, in the current envision, the engineering head house is not my phrase, I'm sorry, that's from Payette, but it's on all the drawings, so I stuck with it. That will have smaller general purpose classrooms, basically because we're limited by not just the width of the building, but the existence of support structures. We don't want the building to come down. What you see here is a rendition with the 2 end caps also added on. And one of my development goals in the next 2 years is to raise enough money so that we don't do the first renovation of Sackett, build out a shelled structure, have a grand opening, and then turn around and do phase 2 and put it under construction again. That just doesn't make sense. It also turns out that if we can fund it all at once and do it in the first phase, we probably save about $1.5 million, $2 million. Right? So we save time and money. It seems like a good proposition. It's about $12.5 million to fill out that shell space and build the other wing. If we can do that, which also makes the building, of course, bigger, right? That also puts on the table the idea of not using Sackett for administration, which is the current view, but to actually use that for computer science. It wouldn't hold all of them, but to give them a bigger facility, right, that's modernized, that could be designed specifically for their needs, puts them in closer proximity to electrical engineering buildings, right, to really help enhance the School of EECS construct and move them forward. Right. So this is Core and West Campus again after phase 1, right? But ultimately the hope is that this lawn is never green. I don't see any reason to spend $1 million, $1.5 million on landscape architecture for a future building site, right? So my goal is that as we get into, well into phase 1 construction, and we get close to the point of taking Hammond down, right, that the Board of Trustees is at the point where they approve phase 2, right, and start putting resources towards architect selection and design for new buildings on there. So the master plan has notional ideas of what that could look like. And so this is the master plan at the end of phase 2. So you see in West Campus, there's another building next to West 1, which we call West 3. But you also see that Sackett is completed, and you see 2 more large buildings on Core Campus, as well as a nice outside lawn space, right, and a welcoming entrance from College Avenue into what we call Core, right? So this is that Core Campus notionally after phase 2, right? The blue parts are what's built in phase 2, right? The ends of Sackett and the 2 new large buildings. So we would then end up with a welcoming plaza coming from College Ave into our Core home, right? You still see the key location of Reber, EE East and EE West, right? We still have the Alumni Center there, but now it's really fluidly part of a bigger green space that also would support our students. Right. This is then West Campus after phase 2, right? And you can see the addition of West 3. And you also note that I put a circle around this little building here in the middle called ASB, it's the Applied Science Building. That building is currently, has our acoustics program, and then the rest of the building is Applied Research Lab. ARL's own vision is to relocate a couple miles down the road into their own science park, right? So another thing that's in the master plan is that when ARL leaves ASB and this bigger building, if you're old enough to know as the bakery, we call it Research West. ARL has about half of that. When ARL moves out, the master plan also includes that those spaces go to us, right? So then West Campus would also have its own quad as well as the student hub that you see in yellow, right, with the landing point coming off of Westgate. Right, so why are we excited? I think it's hopefully self-evident, right? $370 million is a large investment, right? That $370 million is West 1, West 2, Sackett renovation, tear down of Hammond, tear down of the units, right? But you can also ask, what keeps me up at night? Right, this beautiful plan, right, that really takes us forward in a major way doesn't address the needs of my 3 biggest departments, right? Those needs get met in phase 2. So what keeps me up is that phase 2 is truly critical to our success as well, and that we have to look at, the master plan was done as a 10-year plan because if you tried to do everything in phase 1, right, all at once, we'd have a swing space nightmare. We wouldn't have places to put people. And the way building economics works in central Pennsylvania is the cost per square foot of every building would skyrocket if we tried to build too much at once. People are building in Pittsburgh, they're building in Philly, right? We're pulling at labor pools. Escalation is a problem. We've built some escalation into the budget, right? But that's a consistent worry. So we had to do a 2-phase plan, and getting that buy-in and commitment for phase 2 to move forward before phase 1 is even done, is really one of the things that we'll be pressing over the long term. So with that, I've left some time somehow for questions. I thank you for listening, and I really would welcome any thoughts or questions you might have.
Can I
Yes,
ask a question?
sure.
Dean, there was a New York Times article published a few months ago, and it reported on the computer science program at the University of Washington, and they're having a huge problem in enrollment management, especially for juniors and seniors, who want to take their, their mandatory classes, and literally students are having problems graduating on time because they cannot enroll in the classes that they want to take. And I know it's an issue at all the major universities in the United States. So is this something that's an issue here at Penn State?
Yes. So we're not at the point where students can't graduate, but we are very well beyond the point where we can't offer the students the diversity of offerings, course offerings that they should have. Right, so we're not able to give them the full spectrum of opportunity. We'd love to have multiple dual degrees with CS. We don't know how we would possibly support that from a student perspective, both within the college and outside the college. We have started in the last couple months in-depth conversations with the provost about how to significantly increase the number of faculty in computer science because of this. They've had, Cheetah, you've grown by how many students in 4 years? What percent? Twice. They've doubled in 4 years. Yeah, and so we have that problem. We haven't hit the New York Times critical point yet, but we're getting close. The challenge is twofold. One is the student increase, which we want to encourage. Right? We don't. There's no lack of job market for these students when they graduate. Right? It's a good problem to have. The bigger challenge is most of our disciplines, when they hire faculty, are competing with other universities. Right? When computer science goes to hire faculty, they're competing with universities that literally have a mandate, hire as many as you can, and they're competing with Google, and they're competing with Amazon, and they're competing with PwC, and they're competing across the board, right, with all the companies that are also wanting to hire their undergraduates, right, are also looking to hire PhDs. And the salaries are a little higher than some of the other disciplines also. So we have, we've been encouraging computer science to recruit aggressively, and they're responding. They started the year looking to hire 4, and the message we've given them recently is if you can hire more, go for it, while we still figure out the full growth plan for them. The discussion, any discussion with the provost starts with, well, what's going to be the financial return if we invest, right? And so I've spent a bit amount of time, the New York Times helps, right, reminding him that there's, in a business there's 2 things. You have to meet your existing customers, and then you have to invest in new opportunities. And right now we're not meeting the existing customer demand. That requires some immediate resources, even as we think about long-term opportunities for the program. So another conversation we've started with, and maybe Cheetah will talk to you guys about it, is how do we build a world campus bachelor's degree in computer science? Right? Because that's another way to meet the demand across the country, right, without worrying about bed space and dorm rooms and the other implications. But yes, it's very much on our mind.
The dual degree program, is there an opportunity to ask the question in a slightly different way? More in terms of skills and competencies that the vast majority of the students graduating will need?
Yes.
And design the major boost of that rather than pick the dual degree and append it to a primary degree?
Yes, I mean, so our degree, so the question was whether to go about the question of dual degrees from a different angle and starting with the question of what is the student's skill set, right? And then how do you build the degree or degrees to match the skill set? And yes, that is very much what we want to do. The thing the departments will remind you of when you have that conversation is that we have this thing called ABET, right? And so our degrees, in principle, ABET should be asking that question, right? It's not always the question that gets asked. Every discipline has their own ABET construct for their own societies, right? And so we have to make sure that while we push the edge of leadership in education, right, that we also understand there are going to be some ABET issues that could arise. But yes, I think that is ultimately the question we want from you answered is, what is the skill set of the student you want to hire in the next 5-10 years? Yes?
In the learning factory, have you thought about going out to the high schools and asking these kids what they want? Why do they want to come to Penn State? What facilities would they need? And then secondly, the kids at the branch campuses coming in here, what do they want? So that, we can sit here and prophesy over what we think it should be, but they're the ones who have to use the facility.
So we do some of that. We actually can just go down the street and see what State College High has, which is actually brand new and pretty impressive. And yeah, so yes, we do need to answer that question, but I also don't want to go too far down the road of asking a student, what skills do they need to work for your companies, right? So we want to look at this from a 360 perspective, right? The students is one side of the perspective, right? But what is the hands-on skill set that they develop while they're here that gives them the most value, right, when they go into the job market? So the answer is yes, right? But we also need your voice.
Thanks for sharing the master plan vision as it shaped up. It's shifting a big proportion of the students into West Campus spaces. Part of the feedback last year was about making sure that there's sort of safe connectivity and travel and transit of students across. Could you share a little bit about what the vision is for how to kind of safely and efficiently move students back and forth across?
So this is a question we talked about a lot with the university and with OPP. One of the reasons we're situating sort of West 1, West 2, West 1, West 3 on that north side, right, is to make it a natural flow from Westgate, right? We bring up the topic of maybe we need another way of crossing Atherton, right, that's further south, because right now you're going, you run across Atherton and then you're into parking lots, right? It's about as unwelcoming as can be other than walking an extra distance. We get consistently told no, right? We get told, well, that's a couple $1 million at least, and Atherton is a state highway, and so it took, I'm not sure how many years just to get that speed limit reduced. So this is a constant struggle between us, the university and the town and the state. So right now, unfortunately, the plan continues to be, that's what Westgate is for. Now, as we change the numbers, and see larger flow, then maybe we can reopen that discussion. But right now it's walkway, and the other thing that they hope will help this is one of the things that drove the location of the garage is a bus depot. So that garage will be well served by CATA. So it's another now if you're trying to hurry from class to class, you probably don't want to stand and wait for the bus. But it's one aspect of the master plan that I think we hope to revisit after we see the change in the student numbers, because I agree with you. I don't think one throughput is the best way to do it. Yes.
So somewhat analogous to that question, right? We talked about the West Campus being a center and hub for the engineering, but at the same time we want to drive greater collaboration. Will there be opportunities for students outside the College of Engineering, whether it be at the College of Science or Humanities, whatever it might be? What's the impetus for them to cross the street?
Right.
What's the impetus for us to cross the street, unless we have to deal with the tragedy in the East? But what's the impetus for us to cross the street?
So the second one is the easier question, right? If you look at let me back up, the end state, if I can back up, apparently I can't. If you look at the end state after phase 2, right, we've got pretty good balance between West Campus and Core Campus, right, as well as CBEB on East Campus, the reactor on East Campus, and some research facilities on East Campus. So we're kind of spread around, right, in 2 or 3 hubs once everything is said and done. So that will kind of drive our flow a bit. We haven't gotten to the conversation of sort of makerspace access in our Eberly student. If you're a physics student and you want to do a makerspace, we haven't gotten into that conversation of, are we welcoming because we want that flow, or we've got 8,000 students, there's just no room. I don't think we're anywhere near that conversation yet. The parking deck will probably actually produce some of that. Food in West Campus will do some of that. In terms of interaction with IST, right, they're still in Westgate. I'm getting the look from Aaron. EMS does have some space on West Campus as well in EES, so there will be some, but it's certainly, from the West Campus perspective, it's something we've got to think about. So I'll take one comment from Janice.
I just want to comment, some of us are already in the Leonard Building, and we collaborate a lot, a tremendous amount, even with business, which is darn far. It's really not just about building and spaces, it's about programmatic and dual degrees and cool things that we can do together. It's funny how people perceive West Campus to be so far. I can walk from the Leonard Building to the Hammond Building in 5 minutes. It is really not that big a deal.
So I had one more question here. Sorry, Aaron.
From your presentation, Penn State looks like they want to take a leadership role in energy resilience and innovation, atmospheric science research. They're adding a bunch of new engineering buildings. In the spirit of Winston Churchill saying, we shape our buildings and thereafter they shape us. Is there any effort to kind of make these buildings into cutting edge examples of resilience and energy efficiency?
It's in the discussion for sure. We are fortunate right now that the Associate VP for Facilities and the head of OPP is also a PhD in civil engineering. He oversaw the construction of the Cornell campus in New York City. And these issues are very much on his mind because he also has to manage energy on campus. So we're having the conversations, and the question of what level of efficiency we can reach in each of the two buildings is still a discussion. But it is very much in the discussion. And when we asked for the bids for the designs of the buildings, that was one of the topics the architects had to address. All right, so with that, I will thank you again for your time, for your listening, for coming for 2 days, and look forward to hearing your feedback tomorrow. Thank you all very much.